Hey guys, Stealth here. In this tutorial for Transport Fever 2, I'm going to look into how to make airplanes profitable. In Transport Fever 1, this could be quite a challenge, because airplanes can be really expensive to operate, and, well, you want to make some cash out of them, so how do you do it? In this case, I'm going to be providing St. Louis with fuel. And I'm going to do it in the least efficient way possible, while still making me money. I've already scouted out the map, and St. Louis seems to be the most interesting opportunity to show you how these planes make money. Now, St. Louis wants fuel, and fuel has a few intermittent steps. You start out with crude oil. You transform the crude oil into actual oil. And you transform the actual oil, then, if I have a refinery nearby, over here, for example, the Sunnyvale fuel refinery, you refine oil into fuel, and then you ship that back to St. Louis. Now, you could do that by taking, for example, the St. Louis oil well here, this one, the refinery, and that one over there. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ship it all the way across the map, because the game pays you for distance transported. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, I'm going to set up with a small route over here. This is just to make sure that I don't have to set up a plane to go from here to here. Because one thing you need to know about the planes is while they are fast, they do take a lot of distance to turn around. And that's something that you really got to keep in mind when you're setting up your routes. Because sometimes the game just goes, nope, I'm going to go the merry way around. And it's going to be a hell of a stretch. It's going to be a really long flight when you're just trying to turn around. So this is just an intermittent step, and this is just to make sure that I have the crude oil being refined into oil. Now, as with most lines, ideally you would want to have a bit of two-way transport. Actually, this is crude. You want to have two-way transport, because if your plane or any other vehicle is empty for half the time, then you're paying for nothing half of the time, or rather you're not getting paid half of the time. So that's not something I want. I want to make sure that I get paid all the way through. So what I'm going to do is set up the airport now. For this, you're going to need a lot of room. Airports, especially the large cargo airports, are both expensive and need a ton of room. So sometimes it might not fit. In this case, it's going to be quite hard to try and fit this in anywhere. Because as you can see, it's colliding with the road, it's colliding with the terrain. So I'm just going to do a bit of landscaping here. Sorry about the noise, that is quite a bit louder than I hoped. Doing a bit of landscaping, the road will have to get rebuilt after I'm done, but for now I just want to squeeze this airport in here somewhere. And notably so that it actually connects to the oil refinery. So now I have the airport connected, and this is the large cargo airport. I'm going with one hangar, one terminal, and one landing direction on the left. That's fine. One thing that they haven't implemented into the game, maybe yet, maybe it's still to come, is a module where you can configure your airport and add an extra runway. Because sometimes the runway can be a bit of a bottleneck, and you're going to find that the runway is the thing that's keeping up your whole operation, because you can only land one plane at a time. Alright, I'm gonna fix this road up again. And there is one more thing that I need to do, and that is set up a route from the truck stop here, which is which is where the airport is going to be dumping the actual fuel. So I need a line from here to St. Louis, to where St. Louis is going to need the fuel. So I'm going to set my filter on the top left to cargo. And now I can see where the fuel is needed. There's a little bit of need here, but most of it is on the southeast edge of the town. I think one truck stop might just be able to service the whole area. Yeah, that services almost the entire town. Okay, I can just add that to the crude line, because they're already making a stop here. So after they hit the St. Louis West, I also want them to add this stop to their line. So now I don't need to set up additional trucks. Okay, now for the planes. As I mentioned, the least efficient way, because I'm getting paid by the distance traveled. This is where I'm going to take it, the Eugene Fuel Refinery. It is very, very far away, but it works. Now, I've already set up this road, so I can connect my airport right away. And the airport can be a bit finicky. There we go. This is 20 million for an airport. Take note that you're going to need a lot of cash to make an airport. These things do not come cheap. Okay then, next stop. I need to connect the two together. I'm going to start over here, St. Louis, and you can see that the airplane already makes quite a circle. So if you have a town over here and a town over there, it's not worth going with a plane. Similar to where you wouldn't use a plane to go from your town to a town 15 kilometers away. I'm flying all the way to Eugene North. As you can see, the path is quite the distance. This line I don't need. This is the, let's say, the oil to fuel airborne. Because this is what's going to happen. The plane is going to go here, pick up the oil that's been refined in the refinery, take it all the way over here to the other side of the map. Once it's there, it's going to get refined into fuel. Now, very important for me was to find an opportunity where you have 1-to-1. Because otherwise, I'm going to be flying a half-empty plane for quite a bit of the time, and I don't want that. If I, for example, were to do it with grain and food, I'd be flying into grain, but I'd only flying out one food, so that's less efficient. Alright, now that we have that set up, time to go for a plane. Like vehicles, like deploying airplanes or airports, planes are expensive hobbies to have. I can get one plane for 25 million. If I go for the Bombardier, it's not that bad. You're paying 7.8. But let's say I want to go for a really big plane. The Tupolev Tu-204C. Or the Hercules. Although the Hercules is actually quite a bit smaller. No, let's go for the Tupolev because I think that's the biggest one. You're paying 4.2 million a year in upkeep. So right now I have invested about 75 million in this one line. One airport cost me 20 million. The plane cost me 25 million. And this airport I think also cost me in the region of 20 million. So it's going to take quite a bit of time to recoup your investments. Keep that in mind. Now I'm going to start the connections up. Immediately the oil well springs to life and starts to spawn in oil. Crude, actually. Currently the trucks are quite close together, but fortunately the oil well is capable of producing a maximum of 400, and you can see that shipping is going up rapidly. The first thing that's going to happen is that we're going to be transporting as much stuff towards the airport as possible. I'm going to add an extra truck just to make sure that I have enough waiting at the airport. And I'm going to go for a Cascadia tank truck because they can transport actually slightly more crude. There, we now have 52 waiting. But that's all the way over here. I need it to be waiting over here. So these trucks need to hurry up, get into the truck stop, and from there deploy it onto the airport. And you're going to see a queue going up here. This is where the oil is going to be waiting for the airplane to get picked up. There's the airplane. It's a bit early. At least this thing is going to have some fuel, and you can, some oil, and you can see it's being dropped off right here. Now, I'm not going to get anywhere near to my plane's capacity, because this thing can transport 54. And it's currently only carrying 16. So, yeah, it's not going to be too efficient as of right now. I'm already doing minus 1.6 million, because I'm paying upkeep on planes, I'm paying upkeep on airports. And keep in mind that airport infrastructure is also quite pricey. 2 airports are going to set you back 1.4 million, and I'm not even through the year. I think I'm going to be paying about 3 million in total. Now this thing is going to keep producing more and more oil, and at some point there will probably be more oil here than I can actually fit onto the plane. Which for me is a good situation, because that means that I have my planes flying efficiently. Now let's follow along with the plane. Let's see where it's at currently. There's the airport. The plane's already starting descent. Now this plane is capable of quite a bit of speed. but it's not really getting there. It's doing 850 at the top, but you're already starting to slow down because, well, you already crossed the map. Here we are, landing. I'm currently minus 4.2 million. Planes are absolutely killing for the amount of cash that you have. This thing cost me 4.2 million a year. And look at the value of the plane go down. But, here it is. This little bit of oil made me 3.7 million. And all of a sudden the plane is positive. And that's with about a third of the hull that it can possibly hold. Now it's time for the fuel refinery to spring to life. And it does. It has produced a little bit of fuel, but unfortunately too late for the plane. So the plane, especially the first year, maybe even year and a half, is going to be costing you a lot of money. After that period, it can actually gain you quite a lot of money. Because right now I have 18 oil waiting over here. There's another big truck coming in. This one's carrying 30, keep in mind, crude. So that's about 15 oil, because it's a 2-to-1 ratio. Immediately gets loaded onto the airport. And hopefully going to be there pretty soon. Because that plane is already on approach. We got 33, 34, 35. Maybe I can get to 45 and even 50 before the plane gets here. 45. It has a capacity, what was it, 52? 54. There's 48 units of oil over here. Now with the first line, the first flight, it was only about half or even a third full. Now it's definitely way better. But it's a long flight. I'm leaving the game currently on the standard one-time speed. Take note, the plane takes off on May 22nd. It's going to take a while before this plane actually reaches the other side of the map. It's going to take a long time, and all that time the plane is going to be costing me money because this number keeps ticking. It keeps going up and up and up. Or rather, I mean, the number stays the same, but the amount of maintenance cost that I'm paying, this bar is going to continue to go up until it reaches about 4.5 million. But I am pretty confident that right now I will be making a lot of money with this plane. Because not only am I going to be transporting it one way, I'm also going to be transporting it the other way. Because now I'm going to be having a little bit of fuel on board, which I can then deploy back to my other airport, and from there onto St. Louis, which is the original destination. Now this might be a little bit of a far-fetched example, because you wouldn't reasonably transport this stuff all the way across the map if you didn't absolutely have to. But you can. And, let's see, 11.3 million in one flight. That's a whole lot of cash. And all of a sudden, the plane is exceeding the amount of cash that it's costing me. Also take note, we started off on May 22nd with that flight. 5 months later, the plane arrives. That's a hell of a flight. Anyway, would you reliably do this on every map? Probably not, because it's not in any way, shape or form the most efficient way of doing business. But if you have a map where you want to be supplying a position on the other side of the map, let's say there's a town that needs tools or machines or any other expensive end product, and you can set up a two-way route, then it can work, and it can work rather well. That's what I'm hoping to show you with this tutorial. That planes, while they can be a little daunting and they can be a hell of a first investment, because my startup costs were, and this is with the larger airports, about 70 million. If you go for the smaller airports, you're paying about 4.5 million a piece, so per airport, and then up to about 8 to 10 million for a plane. And that's just the airplane and its required infrastructure. That's not even counting the lines that are supplying the airport or that are taking the fuel away from the airport. Now the plane's here. Let's see how much it brings in on the return flight. 4 million. And it's now taking on a hull of 54. So, 48. So I could probably even add another vehicle over here to make sure I have a bit more. So by adding another car over here, another vehicle to this line, I can make sure that the airplane never departs empty, or near empty. In the meanwhile, St. Louis should soon be getting its first bit of fuel. I think this truck... Yep, this truck's carrying fuel. Now the crude line in itself is already making money, about 400,000 a year, and that's without even transporting fuel. That is just transporting crude. So now with this thing, I can see what 1/2 hull of fuel makes me. That's 69,000. So a full hull is going to make me about 140. Anyway, plane on its way back. It's right here, and it should now be picking up 45 units of fuel, which is, I think, going to make me another 11 million. And let's see what this plane is going to be making on average. You're looking at about 11, maybe 12 million in income and 4 million in cost. Yeah, 11.3 is what it made in 2001. 2002 it looks to be doing quite well. Probably going to be doing even more, because now I'm also returning with an almost full hull of fuel. And this is going to make me money. A while ago I was negative 3, even 4 million at some point. And now I'm making 9 million a year. Keep in mind, airports are expensive to build and expensive to run. So if you can add another line to either this airport or the airport all the way over in St. Louis, do so. Because that is going to more or less depress the cost that you're paying per airline that's hitting this particular airport. In case that you find that you have so many lines running to the same airport that you're going to need more cargo terminals, then hit the configure button and bring up another cargo terminal. And on any of those blue dots over there, you can set up another cargo terminal. So that you can have 2 lines running the same airport without really running into each other. The only bottleneck that they can run into is the runway. I have seen planes line up, even do flybys because there was not any room on the runway. Or you can see them standing over here on the taxiway just waiting for clearance and not getting it because there are so many planes landing. And there it is, another 11 million. So this plane, more or less, in the span of, I'd say 3 years, almost 4, has made me 3.78 million, so let's say 3.8, 11.3, 15.7 and 11.4, and with that has definitely recouped its own investment. The line overall is making me 22 million a year, and that's with 1 aircraft. I could add more aircraft to this line. I could make this line even more profitable. Again, is this the most efficient way of doing business? No, probably not. I could set up a train to take it from here to there, to the Sunnyvale fuel refinery and back. And that would probably still net me also quite a good bit of money. But I just happen to like planes. And planes, especially for longer distances, well, they're very hard to beat. Can you do the same with passengers? Potentially. But I have found that passengers usually pick the cheapest or the medium way of getting somewhere. So if you had, let's say, a bus going from St. Louis to, I don't know, Midland, the bus would probably not be very popular. If you also had a train line, I think the train line would be more popular, and the plane would be taken by some, but not a whole lot. So usually when I'm using airports and airplanes, I'm doing it to transport cargo, especially over hard to traverse distances with buses or trains. This just works better, and you know that there's going to be demand. Whereas if I'm running passengers, well, there might be 10 people one day, there might be 20 the next, there might be 10 day the next after. So I don't exactly know how much money the plane's going to be making. Whereas right now, I can ensure that it's running full, at least on the way towards, and potentially 70-75% full on the way back. Keep in mind, if I was not running fuel back, I would not be making nearly as much money. This plane would be making about half, because I would just get the money from the trip towards, but nothing from the trip back. Alright, so that's how you can use airports and airplanes to make money. Have fun with it. Experiment. Try to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. Last tip that I wouldn't leave you with, and I'm going to stress this again, try to find a 1-to-1 ratio. A 2-to-1 ratio is just not ideal. If I would be flying out 2 units of crude oil and flying back 1 unit of oil, I would be flying half empty for most of the time. And I would not be making 22 million a year. I'd be making about 16 to 18, if that. So try to find something on a 1-to-1 basis. All right, have any questions? Let me know down below in the comments. And aside from that, have fun with the planes. And let me know what you come up with down below in the comments.